Hello and welcome back, everyone. It's just another day in the life as a military wife. And I know we've talked about this in the past, but we're going to touch on it again. April is the month of the military child. It was officially established as that in 1986 as an opportunity to recognize the contributions of the youngest members of the military community. And over the years, it has become a more widely recognized celebration. So, in honor of that, we are going to discuss military children today. As always, I am your host, Sam Wolf, and you're listening to Life of a Military Wife. Talked about it before in the episode Purple Up. It's purple is the official color of the month of April to represent the military child. The official flower is the dandelion. And I don't know about you, but I have fond memories as a child of dandelions. I remember picking them when they'd changed from that like yellow gold to the white puffballs and blowing on them and making wishes. And maybe I'm one of the only kids who did that, but I think there was other people because friends, siblings did that too. But I just love that. My mom would get frustrated because she's like, that's going to make more weeds. But they grow everywhere. They literally grow everywhere. And as I was looking into this more, I've come to find out dandelions can grow in all 6 habitable continents. They literally can grow absolutely anywhere. They have really strong, resilient roots. Some places they grow a little bit too well because they can damage crops. They're a very resilient flower. I remember I'd pick dandelions and give them to my mom, as a flower. I'm like, "Here, mom, I picked you a flower." And so I have really fond memories. To this day, I'll leave the dandelions in my yard at the beginning of the spring. They're good for bees and different things like that, but my kids love blowing on them, and I'm not that fastidious about getting rid of every single 100% weeds. I like flowers, even if they're dandelions and they're technically a weed. But that is a total side to what this is about. But the reason why the dandelion was chosen is because it is so resilient. It's because it can grow anywhere. And just like the dandelion, military children are very resilient. They pick up, they move, and they can be sent almost anywhere except for not Antarctica, just like dandelions. Um, the thing that makes the dandelion so strong is their root structure. And one of the things that can make military children so resilient is their root structure. They're, they have a secure base. They have a sense of community. And so I want to just talk about those different things in regards to all of it. Military children struggle. And as I was researching this, I found a lot of references to the struggles that military children face. And there is a lot of struggles they face. Previously mentioned, over 2 million military children have had to experience a deployment since 2001. And that is significant, but also in addition to that, currently there's 1.2 million military children. So it's not just the fact that there's been a lot of military children over the course of our history, but there are still a lot of military children in regards to total numbers now. And if you think about it, like I said, there's been a lot of military children throughout history. And there are a lot of struggles that military kids experience. I was recently reading the Little Britches books with my kids. We're doing it as a read aloud. And because they're in Colorado and they're starting a ranch in Colorado, and the Fort Lewis is near, I think it's Fort Lewis. I might be saying this wrong now. But anyway, there's a military fort nearby, And they go there for church one day, and they get to know some of the military families. They sell them vegetables and stuff to make a profit. But it even talked then about how the military kids were kind of very self-sufficient. They were very hardy. And so it's it's always been a thing, and I'd never really thought about that before, how the tradition of military children, I always think of like World War II or the Korean War or things like that, where families really just didn't come along. But I never really thought about how there would have been military forts out in the West where the soldiers would have their families there, and what that would have been like for them. So it's being a military kid's not a new thing, and it's not going to be going away anytime soon. There are a lot of them, and they go through some significant struggles. But getting back to where I started with the whole thought is that they do struggle. They do deal with a lot, and they do need support. And there's a lot of research studies and resources and things that go into addressing that. MFLACs are great. Family readiness groups help out a lot. The MWRs have resources. Military One Source has resources, and we're going to get into that. But it got me thinking back to what I talk about and have talked about a lot on this podcast because of my degree with family life science, with all of those different stuff. The class I took on resiliency in college, one of the key things that our professor really like honed in on is that when people are going through stressors, when people have these hard things, when they have these struggles, he really honed in on effective, I feel, is a very effective way to handle it. And it's the ABCX model. A is the stressor, B are the resources, and C is perspective. X is the outcome. And we've talked about this before, and I might have B and C mixed up, but basically it's stressor, resources, perspective equal outcome. So when you talk about military children and you're talking about all the struggles they face with parents getting deployed and moving all the time and having to start over and make friends and all of those different things, what are the aspects? What are the things that can help the military children do well and help anyone do well who's struggling? And so, starting with perspective, I know with my kids and our family that perspective helps a lot when we've had to do moves, when we've had um, daddy get sent TDY or sent on deployment or get sent overseas for a hardship tour. The best thing for us is perspective. If I've got a bad attitude about it, if I'm woe is me, this isn't fair, how sad, throwing a pity party, the kids are going to follow suit straight up. They are going to mimic that attitude because you're modeling an attitude. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't hard days. There are hard days, definitely. But attitude really does affect altitude. It does affect how you handle things. And for me, once I can get my perspective on, you know what, we've done this before, we can do it, we've got help, we're going to make this fun, it's only going to be for a little while. Another thing that has really helped with perspective is understanding, in comparison to previous generations of military families, how good we have it. It is not easy to be a military family. It's not easy on my kids to be military children. But unlike family members, I had a great uncle who was in the military service. He was in the Navy. He was gone a lot. And they lived overseas and they didn't get to see family very often while they were overseas. Eventually, they did move back near the rest of the family. Well, they didn't get to call like we did. Like my kids, when I stop and think about what my family went through, my cousins, they didn't get to call their dad. They didn't get to video call their dad. They couldn't leave little messages. We use Marco Polo to communicate when he's gone. And that way, for some operational reason or time zone reason, he's not awake or available, when they're awake and available, they can leave little video messages back and forth to each other. And that has helped a ton. But there's families I've interviewed and spoken to for this podcast, even where they've not met their kid until their baby was like 6 months, a year old, because of military operations, or they've not been able to call and talk except for maybe once a year or something like that. And even at the beginning of the the operations in Afghanistan and Iraq, they had satellite phones, but you only got to call like once a week. And it was very unusual. And when we first got in, there were slightly more availability. But in literally the time we have been in the military, communication has just exploded. And so my kids can communicate with their dad on a regular basis. My kids can see pictures of, or all that sort of stuff of what he's doing and different things like that. We've sent care packages and things like that. And I'm not having to work to provide for them because we get paid. I have the journal of one of my great great grandmothers when her husband was enlisted and recruited in for the army to serve in the Mexican American War. She was stuck back home. Well, not even back home, but anyway, she was stuck in the middle of nowhere, trying to make ends meet and provide for her and her kids. And they didn't get paid until after he got back. And so she was weaving cloth and fabric to sell to the Native Americans who lived near them, for money so that she could afford to feed her kids. So we're just so blessed that our kids don't have to worry about that. We have an income, we have a roof over our heads, and that's all going to be okay, even if daddy gets sent away. So there's perspective, helping your kids understand the good things about what's going on. And then the next is resources. And I've talked about resources all the time, but really perspective and resources are huge. And with resources, we are really, really blessed that the U.S. military has established a lot of resources that they provide themselves. In addition, local communities have a lot of resources as well as schools and churches. So there are a lot of ways to get help for your kids if you need it. And it is so much easier now, perspective again, to get those resources and helps when you move than it was previously. And there are still limitations. I still run into families who are struggling because they have particular needs that they are struggling to find the resources and meet. But we are just really blessed. We are very blessed that we live in a day and age where finding out about resources is a lot easier thanks to the internet and technology. So, sharing and finding and searching for those resources when you're being proactive are a lot easier than they used to be. In addition to that, we have a community. The military community is, there are exceptions to every rule, but by and large, the military community, from my perspective, is a very supporting, welcoming, encouraging group of people. And we do have a lot of different backgrounds and perspectives and beliefs on things. But by and large, there are so many incredible people that we have met and been blessed by as our family. I like to lovingly joke that my kids pick up adopted grandparents everywhere we go. And that's not even a complete joke. We have a previous location where we lived, and we moved into the house, and we found out we lived by a lot of retired couples. And very shortly, we were adopted by them. And one of them would leave treats like have snacks in the garage and have their garage open so my kids could run over and get treats. The other one had a play set in their backyard, and the kids could go play in the play set whenever they wanted. When my husband was gone, both of those couples, the husbands helped mow our lawn and maintain our lawns to help me out. One took care of the backyard, the other one took care of the front yard. It's just, and my kids loved them so much and were just devastated when we moved because they loved their adoptive grandparents. And they still love their real grandparents, don't get me wrong. They love their real grandparents. They see their real grandparents very frequently, compared to the considering the situation. But at the same time, we're so grateful. And I know my mom was grateful for all of the wonderful mentors and these adoptive grandmothers that I had, and the support that her grandkids were getting. She couldn't always be there to read them books as often as she'd liked, but she was grateful that these wonderful women stepped up and were helping me out. And we've had that happen at every single place we've lived. Every place we've lived, we've found adoptive grandparents and we've found a community. And so it's knowing that those resources exist. Some of them are going to be institutional resources that you can look up online, and some of those resources are going to be subject to the community culture and environment. So they're going to be actual people in those areas, people that you can call. I've spoken about it before, but marble jar friends, those people that you can count on when life blows up in your face, because heaven knows Murphy's law of military life applies. And for those of you who aren't aware of what the Murphy's law of military life is, it's basically that as soon as your husband is sent away, or your military spouse, military member in your family is sent away, that life just blows up. Something always goes wrong. There's always a hospital run. Somebody always gets injured, or something, the car always breaks, or the air conditioner has an issue. There's a plumbing problem. There's just literally every single time. There's always something. And we have not been exempt from that at all. We have totally experienced that as a family, and we've rolled with it. My kids have been fabulous. There was a time when my husband was away and I ended up in the hospital, and we had wonderful family and members of our congregation who stepped up and helped took care of the kids until I was back home, and then helped take care of me and the kids when I was back home until my husband got home. And we feel just so blessed to have those people in our lives. And we've had the opportunity to be those kind of people. And that's the other part of the military community. Sometimes it's really easy to just get caught up in woe is me. Life is so hard. And whenever I'm tempted to do that, I remember my mother's example. Her philosophy was there is always someone who is struggling or has it harder than you, or has it harder in a way that you don't think you could do as well, and they could use your help. And so instead of sitting and dwelling on your sadness or throwing a pity party or moping, get up and look for ways to help others. I was really struggling when the older kids were very young and my husband was sent away for a long period of time. And another mom approached me before my husband left with the concept of setting up a preschool program called Music Makers for the community. And I jumped on it. I really was enthusiastic and excited about it. And that really helped me a lot when my husband was gone. And it helped the kids a lot because we ended up having, it was about a 50-50, just community families and military families. But it really helped for them to make friends and not feel alone and have something to look forward to during the week. It forced me to get out of the house instead of wallowing in my sorrow And it forced me to interact with people, and socialization for me is one of the best medicines. I really do so much better when I'm out and about and around people. And I know that some of my kids are the same way. They definitely are extroverts who get their social battery charged when we are involved and engaged. But just getting out of the house sometimes is huge when we have those separations. So, that is just a little bit about all of this. I encountered a few resources through Military One Source while I was going through this in honor of the month of the military child. Military One Source has partnered with different organizations and is offering certain free items for military families, journals, books about how to find calm and other resources. Those were particularly the ones that struck me that I was interested in. So I applied to get those sent for our family. It is limited one per family for those resources. So, yeah, I've got more than one kid, but we could only get one journal. So we'll figure out how that goes when it comes. We'll see which kid wants it. I mean, if one of the kids wants the journal I got for me, they can have it. So, but that was something I wanted to share for all of my military families that are listening, or if you just happen to know a military family but are not a military family yourself. I will be including the link to those resources in the description for this episode. That said, this is the month of the military child. If you do know military families with children, reach out, just tell them thank you or they can do it or some form of encouragement. It would be appreciated, I know. And we are going to just keep plugging along like always. There are some changes coming with the podcast due to Google Podcast getting transferred over to a new platform. And you can reach me on X like always or through the email. Again, podcast links in the description below. If you want to reach out and suggest a book or topic, or if you know of someone or are an organization that you feel their information would be advantageous to get out to the military community, please feel free to let me know. Like I said, baby cuteness is getting awfully mobile. So that is cutting into my ability to do extra interviews and things like that. We'll figure it all out. Especially with the summer coming, I will see how the schedule goes. But with all of that said, thank you all for your support and encouragement. Thank you for the community that we are developing and your kindness and support for each other. I really appreciate it. I do enjoy getting feedback from you guys about resources that you have found helpful or things that you're interested in learning more about. So keep those coming. To borrow the phrase I love so much, be the good you want to see in the world. With that said, I am your host, Sam Wolf, and you're listening to Life of a Military Wife.